Something that's really interesting is sometimes I'll bring nonfiction books around, and then I'll show it to Dr. Dave. And the first thing he does is just go to the back and look at all the like citations and footnotes.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So that's one of the skills that I learned in grad school was like, before you read a book, right? So it could take a while to get through like a book, especially some of the books you bring out, they're thick. I like to see if it's like worth reading based on where they did their research and how they approached their research. So I have a pretty decent idea of, if you brought in a book about a certain topic, I have a pretty good idea of like 30 other books that can connect to this topic. And if I scroll to the back and this person hasn't cited like a single book that I think is foundational to this topic, then I question like, okay, would I read this? Should I read this?
And what are they trying to do with this?
And what are they trying to do?
Yeah.
What's the goal of it? And it's not that it's always bad. Sometimes, especially coming from someone who reads like more dense academic histories, if you have a more broad like public history, that's fine, and it has its like use, and people enjoy that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm not like looking down on that at all. I just think that that's my way of interpreting if I would read that book, or if I think that they missed, like, you couldn't write this book without citing this other book.
Yeah.
So why didn't you do it? And like, where's that gap now? Like, why is that here? So that's why I do that. And then it also just helps me understand, like, okay, what are they actually trying to say? Because I can see, like, oh, if in chapter 2 you cited these 12 books, okay, I have a pretty decent grasp of what chapter 2 is on. Like, I could pretty much tell you what chapter 2 is on without ever having to read it, kind of idea.
But how do you know what books the citations are, or like the...
I read a lot of books.
Oh, man. What's your reading process like? When you're not researching, what do you do? How do you go about reading books and selecting the books you read?
Yeah, so I have like topics, broad topics, right? So I really like social movement history, I really like disability history, I really like World War II, I really like African American history. So I'll do research just in like my free time of books that connect to these for both my work and then for my personal interest. And then I'll just like buy them or go to the library at school or whatever and like rock through a couple of them, and now I know.
Just rock through.
Yeah. And now I know forever. So now it's just in my head, so I can just go on to the next one kind of thing. And that's been a huge part of like history as an academic field, is everyone always wants you to have like the historiography, so the history of history. So if I were to say, oh, I'm really interested in World War II, there's been thousands of books written on World War II. A historian would want you to like consolidate what's the most important 50, 100 books on World War II. Why? What are they saying? How is it different? What are their approaches? And then read all of those, and now how does that interpret the way that you think about World War II? So I do that with all of the topics that I just mentioned. I like think about what are the top 50, 100, 200 books in this field. And then I'll read them, and then there's always new literature coming out. So I try and like separate my time into reading older texts I haven't read yet and keeping up with current scholarship, but like it's impossible to read everything published in a year. Like there's just too much. So you have to try and piece out like what you think will help your own research and then what's just interesting to you. So I read like almost every day. If I'm not here, I'm probably writing or reading somewhere. So where it comes
How many books a year for?
I like can't even count. It's a lot. Like it varies because depending on what my school schedule is like, sometimes my school schedule is more writing intensive and then I'm reading a little bit less. And sometimes I read more. So I probably, in grad school, I've probably read like, in college, I'll say, from like freshman year of undergrad till now, probably read like 2,500 to 3,500 books.
Oh man, I'm way behind.
I realistically probably read like between 200 and 400 books a year.
Okay.
And I've been in school. I'm going into my...
Yeah, so it's just like
Yeah.
over one book a day.
Yeah.